This is a very good friend of the family's car, 2014 Chevy Cruz with the 1.4 liter Echo turbocharged engine, suspected water pump. We did the pressure test. The pressure cap says to take it up to 20 pounds. I did, and it dropped down about 2 pounds in about 5 minutes. It seems to be leaking from the area up here behind the thermostat up front, and so that right there is your water pump right there. So it's leaking from up this area here, but as we further break this down, we'll get to see it. So we're taking loose the intake from the throttle and turbo, and we took loose the mass airflow center array. We got to take these 4 Phillips screws out, and we're going to twist this out of the way, take the filter out of the way, and there may be a bolt holding the filter down. We're going to pop that filter housing out. We had access to it. It's kind of hot right now, so I'm just doing what I could before I decided to drain the antifreeze out. And I'm going to get my jack with a chalk with a board under it and put it up under the oil pan so I can have the engine jacked up slightly while I do this. And I'm gonna have to jack the car up anyway because I got to take the right front tire off. I got to take the fender well out because you got to get in there and you have to get the belt off the pump, and there's a spring down there, the tensioner on that belt, that you pull forward on it, it releases the tension. Then you get like a little Allen wrench and stick it in there, and it'll hold that spring in there, because that spring come out, it'd be a nightmare getting that back in. So you don't have to take the whole belt loose, just get it off of the water pump. And then we're going to be commencing to take the thermostat housing apart and get out of the way. Then like I said, we get the engine jacked up a little bit, and we want to take the motor mount. Comes out in 2 halves, these bolts here and one here, and then 2 bolts on the side there, and then you have access to the water pump. And you got to take these 3 bolts off, and you don't need a pulley for that. That comes off automatic. So it's cool enough now. I have a hose connected to the drain plug. You see the white plug up there in the hose, and it's draining into a clean bucket. So we're gonna just let that continue to drain and continue to work up top here, and get ready to put our jack up underneath there, and just enough pressure to hold the engine steady with a piece of wood. And we're gonna get these bolts off. I believe there's 3/4, and you got 2 right there. And then once we get that off, you got 1 here and 1 here, and then that bracket comes out of there, and you'll have access. I got the clips out of here. I got to take the push pins out of here, pull these what do you call this, inner fender well out, and get under there and take the tension off the belt. Put that little what do I want to call it, I'm at a loss of words, my little Allen head wrench in there to keep the tension on the spring so the spring doesn't come out. So we'll be getting to that part shortly. So you got 3 bolts on that other bracket, and that's the one on the bottom here, and then 1 here, and then 1 on the other side up top that you got to get to. And one of them is too long to come out, so you got to pull it out with the whole bracket. And up it comes. And here is your water pump right here. This is where your hose, you got to disconnect. I already loosened those right there, and it comes over to the thermostat housing. Now behind it, you're going to find a lot of 10mm bolts all the way around it. So what I normally do is I'm going to set the new pump up here. As I take the bolts out, I'm going to put them in there so I know what order they go in. So like I said, we took the old bolts out of the new pump, transferred it back to the old pump, and we're going to sit the old pump back over here. And we're going to go and put the gasket glue on it, and then put the gasket on, let it dry for a while. While it's drying, we're going to clean all that stuff up down there. Oh, and I had to tap on it with just a small ball peen hammer and broke the seal and everything came loose. So we got the gasket on, and I like to put a little bit of goop in the holes, so when I go to put it in, it is sealed that way also. So the gasket is drying, so I'm going to go over and clean up that area and get this nice and clean. The whole metal gasket came out with it, so shouldn't be too much to clean up here. All right, you always want to make sure the mating surface is clean, free of any grease or any oil. That way the gasket would seal and stick a whole lot better. Now, as I said before, there's the old pump up there with the bolts in the proper order. So I'm gonna mount the new pump in, and I'm gonna take the bolts and make sure I get them screwed in, and then we're gonna go in a crisscross pattern. We're gonna be tightening it just snug, and then we're gonna go to about 7-inch pounds, 12-inch pounds, and I think the most you go is 71-inch pounds on them. So we got the new pump on. We got all 10 bolts nice and snug, and now we're gonna connect the hose here, and we're gonna connect the thermostat hose there. Then we're gonna go ahead and put the belt back on, and then we're gonna get the motor mounts back on, and get the breather and all that stuff back on, and get this thing full of coolant, burp the system, bleed it, make sure the heat works, make sure the AC works, and we're also going to pressure test it, make sure there's no leaks. Now that we snug those bolts down, we can go ahead and put our motor mounts back in place. That first plate, and then the top plate, we can kind of lower it a little bit to adjust it to get the holes just right. We got the wheel well cover back in. We got the oil pan cover back on. We're gonna leave her jacked up in the air so we can pour the antifreeze in, and antifreeze best gets all the air out while it's up in the air. So that's how we're going to do it. But first, we're going to put away some of these tools before I put the antifreeze in. Okay, we're in the 2014 Chevy Cruz LT. The heat, the temperature is 1 before the half mark. It's been running quite a while with the AC and the heat on, and seems to be doing fine. We got no leaks, so we're just out taking it for a quick test ride and make sure it doesn't overheat, and when we get back that there's no leaks and everything's just functioning right. This is Rev with Rev It Up Car Fanatic Productions, and that is how you do a water pump on a actually 28, I believe, to 2015 Chevy Cruz 1.4 turbo echo cylinder, and even on the 2020 Chevy Trax, the Buick Encore, same 1.4 Ecotec 4-cylinder engine, and the process is the same. It's not that hard. It's pretty easy to do. You just gotta watch the steps and everything, and you'll get it done. Probably about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. You can do it 1.5 hours, 2 hours, you know. But that's how it's done. Hit the like button, subscribe. We appreciate everyone. God bless. Have a wonderful evening. So we just got through taking it for a little test drive, and AC works, heat works. You see, no leaks under the car. No leaks anywhere under the hood. Runs good. Thermostat's opening up. I'm gonna recheck the coolant since I took it for a ride. Make sure the coolant level is up to snuff here. Let's unlock it. It's been sitting now for about 5 minutes maybe, and let's make sure the coolant is up to where it's supposed to be. yeah, coolant level where it's supposed to be. So everything's nice and dry down there. Dry over here by the thermostat. Dry by the water pump. So we're good to go. Rev it up, Car Fanatic Productions. Like and subscribe. God bless. This is a very good friend of the family's car. 2014 Chevy Cruz with the 1.4 liter Echo turbocharged engine. Suspected water pump. We did the pressure test. The pressure cap says to take it up to 20 pounds. I did, and it dropped down about 2 pounds in about 5 minutes. It seems to be leaking from the area up here behind the thermostat up front, and so that right there is your water pump right there. So it's leaking from up this area here, but as we further break this down, we'll get to see it. So we're taking loose the intake from the throttle and turbo, and we took loose the mass airflow center rate. We got to take these 4 Phillips screws out, and we're going to twist this out of the way, take the filter out of the way, and there may be a bolt holding the filter down. We're going to pop that filter housing out. We had access to it. It's kind of hot right now, so I'm just doing what I could before I decide to drain the antifreeze out. And I'm going to get my jack with a chalk with a board under it and put it up under the oil pan so I can have the engine jacked up slightly while I do this. And I'm gonna have to jack the car up anyway because I got to take the right front tire off. I got to take the fender well out because you got to get in there and you have to get the belt off the pump, and there's a spring down there, the tensioner on that belt, that you pull forward on it, it releases the tension. Then you get like a little Allen wrench and stick it in there, and it'll hold that spring in there, because that spring come out, it'd be a nightmare getting that back in. So you don't have to take the whole belt loose, just get it off of the water pump. And then we're going to be commencing to take the thermostat housing apart and get out of the way. Then like I said, we get the engine jacked up a little bit, and we want to take the motor mount comes out in 2 halves, these bolts here and one here, and then 2 bolts on the side there, and then you have access to the water pump. And you got to take these 3 bolts off, and you don't need a pulley for that. That comes off automatic. So basically this little breather, just pop that right out of there. There's no other bolts that's holding this on, so you're going to rock it back and forth and it pulls right out of the cradle. And I always take these little leaves, empty it out, and place it on the side out of the way, and take the air filter and set it out of the way there. So now here's a better look at the water pump. And let me get my flashlight. It's not leaking very much, but 100 and something thousand miles on here. Oh, my flashlight is gone. Oh boy. All right. So at this point, I strongly recommend get you your 10 millimeter, loosen these bolts up while you have the belt on. Okay. And it's really hard to see down in there, but it's wet down in there. And so as we continue to break this down, we'll see what's going on. Okay, so we got the belt off the water pump. It's an easy belt routing system, but let me show you under here. Let me get the light. Pull the fender well out, and you see where my socket is on that pulley, and you want to tighten it, and it pulls down on the belt. And then if you see, I got that little Allen wrench right there in that little keyhole. I'll show you from the top. That way that spring won't bounce out of control and be all out of place. So there's that spring from the top that's inside that hole. So now I can get a block of wood, get up underneath the transmission, and support the transmission, and we're going to get these brackets loose here. 3 bolts loosen the thermostat up. I didn't take the temp gauge off, but I took it off from the holes there. And then underneath, you want to remove this pan. There's 4 pins, and then if you see, I got my jack with the block of wood, got the transmission jacked up. I got this hole covered so nothing get lost in there. So we're going to take these 3/4 bolts out right now. My bad, the bolts were actually 5/8. Then you got 2 5/8 bolts right here. And I am going to use a shorter socket to get that one out of there, 5/8. So we got the 10 bolts out. We took them out in the order that is on the pump here and put them on the new pump. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So now all we got to do is just pry that pump off. Then we got to clean up the housing, get it nice and clean, and we'll be putting on the gasket, letting that dry, and transfer the old bolts to the old one. So I'll put it back in order then. Sorry, I had a phone call. Like I said, when I take this pump off, I'm going to put that up here, and I'm going to transfer the pumps back into the old bolt and into the old pump. And while I do that, I'm going to take the new pump, I'm going to put the sealant on it, and I'm going to put the new gasket on it so the gasket can dry, and then that way I can get all these bolts lined up and put back in and torque down to the proper spec. So let me pry this off and put my pan under there, because some more antifreeze may come out from there, I don't know. The thermostat has a good seal on it. All we did is wipe off the grease. There's 3 10mm bolts that goes back into the thermostat, and we got to hook it back into that hose and get that clamp back on there. But first we want to get those bolts in there, because it's hard to get to that bolt underneath with that hose on there. Okay, we got that hose back on. We put that clamp in the right place. We got the hose back on underneath there with that clamp on. Now to get the thermostat hose on, see that clip retainer is up. Slide that over the hump, push the clip down, and she's in place. And that's how easy it is to do that part. So now we're going to put the water pump hub back on and get the belt on, and we're going to get those bolts tightened. Okay, we got the belt on. We took the pin out and the belt round. I said it's very simple, very easy. You can't really mess that up. So we got all that set. Now that the belt is on, we can go ahead and tighten these bolts up tight. Okay, we got the mount in it went on the side, the 3 bolts, 2 up top, 1 on the bottom. We got the top one up. We got those torqued. We let it down so it can relax and we get it tight. Now we can just take the jack from underneath there and remove that block from off of there. We're going to need the jack still to get the tire and stuff back on. So I'm going to get the top half of this back on. Then I'm going to go down to the bottom and get that bottom pan up and get the fender shroud back on and get the tire on, and then get this thing going. Okay, we got our air induction hook tightened back up. We made sure we got our hose clamps on the bottom of the thermostat. We got the thermostat in. We got a breather in. We put the tube in, push back in, connect our mass airflow sensor, and tightened all these bolts down. So the top half of the engine is done. So now we're going to go underneath and put that pan back up and get our fender well back up, and we're going to fill it up with coolant and get it right. We got it all back together. The coolant level is snuff is all bled. We got heat working, and we're good to go. We don't have any leaks. Looking good down there. Looking good down there. Looking good underneath the vehicle. So we'll let it continue to run just a little bit more.